The Chinese Foreign Ministry, when asked about the Indian Army reporting casualties in a clash with China, have called on India to not take unilateral actions or stir up trouble. Beijing accusing India of crossing the border and attacking Chinese personnel. This is what ANI has been flashing based on what the Chinese government has said. So this is obviously a very serious escalation. China says that we have crossed the border, which would mean the line of actual control in that area, attacking Chinese personnel. The Indian Army has confirmed that there have been casualties on both sides, India confirming that we've lost an officer and 2 men. However, what the additional detail that came in is that our soldiers who died were not killed as a result of gunshot injuries. Now, if that is the case, then how exactly did they die? Were they beaten to death? Was there stone pelting as a result of which they died? And if there were casualties on the Chinese side as well, then what were the circumstances in which that happened? How could there be a situation on the line of actual control where actual firing did not take place? People don't usually die. That also protected soldiers just in brickbats being thrown at each other or stoning taking place. Was there bayoneting which took place? That's again something that's rare in the context of modern conflict. People fire. Was there artillery shelling which has also taken place? Again, no clear answer to that. However, the Indian statement, and this is important for us to reflect, is that India has counterattacked and India has inflicted casualties on the Chinese side. The language of our statement is pacifist in comparison to what we are hearing from Beijing, where Beijing quite clearly makes mention, warns India that we should not take unilateral action. Nidhi Razdan joins us for more on this. She's been looking very closely at this situation. A couple of points. Firstly, a belated statement from India that we have counterattacked. The army has issued a revised statement. And secondly, Nidhi, a statement which sounds like a warning from Beijing, which tells us not to take up unilateral actions. What are you hearing from Beijing and your sources?
Well, Vishnu, we're also awaiting a formal statement from the Ministry of External Affairs. We have got the Army statement for the moment, and it's very clear that when you look at even the Indian Army statement and the Chinese statement that has just come, there's very clearly a difference in tone. The Chinese statement seems far more aggressive in its tone and tenor, accusing India of taking unilateral action here, whereas the Indian Army statement talks about how this had happened during the de-escalation process that happened yesterday. This is clearly the most serious confrontation that has happened between India and China. The time I believe there's ever been a casualty has been way back in 1975. So therefore, this is something that is of concern, and we are awaiting more details from the Indian Foreign Ministry on what happens next, because I think this has come to a situation where it can no longer, frankly, be left to military commanders to resolve. This is something that perhaps the Prime Minister will have to intervene himself on, and pick up the phone and speak to President Xi Jinping himself. He and President Xi have met multiple times, including last year, just several months ago, just under a year ago in Tamil Nadu. So there is clearly a personal relationship that they do share as well. And it's time to put these informal summits that have happened, whether in Wuhan or in Tamil Nadu after that, to some use, and perhaps activate a direct line between the leaders directly of India and China, rather than leave it to military commanders. So perhaps we will see that happen now, Vishnu.
I think it's important also, Nidhi, to reflect on the point that the information we have at this juncture is very preliminary, and that the full details aren't with us at this stage. All we do know that the Indian Army has retaliated, and our statement says there are casualties on both sides. I think the point you're mentioning is important, that this would need an intervention by the Prime Minister's office one way or the other, sooner than later. But would you like to reflect on the larger point that this is the first time in several decades that we've gotten into a fatal encounter, a situation with the Chinese on the line of actual control? The worst of times, that's not happened in decades.
Absolutely, Vishnu. And Vishnu, you cover the Defense Ministry. You know now for such a long time that there have been skirmishes on the LAC for a very long time. There are different perceptions that both countries have of what the LAC actually is in different sectors. So yes, you will have these transgressions that will take place from time to time. Many of these will be minor incidents which will be taken care of at the local level. There have, of course, been serious incidents and confrontations, but never like this in such a long time. So yes, you had Doklam, you had what happened in Depsang way back when Prime Minister Manmohan Singh was Prime Minister in 2014, and at that time, if you remember, India, in fact, threatened to call off the visit of the Chinese Premier Li Keqiang, and unless the Chinese backed off.
Nidhi, I'm just interrupting you for a moment because we've got a few more details coming in. A statement from AFP, which says, and this is their copy, which says, Foreign Ministry spokesperson Zhao Lijian told reporters Indian troops crossed the border twice on Monday, quote, provoking and attacking Chinese personnel, resulting in serious physical confrontation between border forces on the two sides. Beijing has lodged, quote, strong protests and solemn representations to New Delhi.